Julie? Randall, Julie, can you hear me? Good evening, Julie. Oh, I didn't mean this is so funny. I did not. And I'm looking at you too, which is unfair because you're not seeing any of us. So, hi there. It's Steve, and I'm just testing some things here. I see both you and Randall have joined us, so I just want to make sure you could both hear us. And clearly, by your reaction, you can hear us. So, we'll get started in just a moment, okay?
I'm good too, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Can you tell me who's online there, Steve, and then we can bring the meeting to order?
Okay, we have Randall and Julie joining us remotely this evening.
Okay, so we have a quorum. The very first thing for tonight would be approval of the January 26th minute. Bill moves.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? All right. The next line is the disbursement. Steve, would you like to just make a quick summary?
Absolutely. So I wanted to, in response to last meeting's request by Commissioner Ashton, I went ahead and added the last two columns of the what we call the revenue billing table, essentially the lease rent monthly by month. And I went ahead and the first column represents when the term of the existing lease expires and is ready for renewal. And then the second column, entitled Adjust, some of our leases, say we have a 3-year and they might have yearly adjustments. So I needed a place to, for both basically. And so what that would represent is the month and year that adjustment within the lease, the existing lease term is contained. So you should have all that. And by the way, I know it's kind of one of these things with being, having the packets online and readable for you if you're at home or whatever. And so I know it's pretty small print, but it's the only way to get it to read. Otherwise you're contorted a little bit if we flip it any differently. And so I hope it works because it couldn't be any smaller print, I know. So I know that problem. But if there's ever anything that you can't read or want to double check on, just let me know.
So Steve, I just have a quick question. When we were looking at this chart, basically this reflects what's going to be paid all year, and then where does it reflect that what has been paid? So since it's the end of February, most of the January payments are in?
Yes.
And then I guess my question to you is, was there anything, how are we doing with a couple of our tenants, maybe?
Yes.
We could just say it now, then later.
Absolutely. So an update on two of them. One, the Bare Bones Barbecue, which you heard from me last weekend or last month, was pretty far behind, and we have engaged since the last meeting, and actually, they were able to pay in full their outstanding rent that they owe to us. And it amounted to about $10,500.
Okay.
But we are caught up through January. They were able to obtain a loan to do that. They have been closed temporarily through much of January and into February, and plan to reopen as soon as the weather is, allows for it, I guess, here pretty quick. So I think there's a good plan moving forward and a better understanding about some of those expectations. And then secondly, the diner, who has been making their current monthly payments for the last, since the renewal in November, but has been very sort of hit or miss or sporadic on the back payments, was able to make a full payment of like $8,000 just about a week ago, which represents, $3,000, just so you know, represents the existing monthly payment, and then, the difference is applied to the amount still owed. And so if we can keep that up, especially in the month of February, which, by the way, I'm surprised, and I asked about that, and I'm told that, things have kind of begun to turn. Now, we hope and wish for the best for that trend to continue, or not to be just a trend, but to be the business as usual coming out of, or going into 2021 here. So both positive and in the right direction. Thank you.
Are there any questions on this?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Is the barbecue place still owned by the same owners as before? They just changed the name?
That's correct.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay.
All right. Can I have a motion to approve the disbursements? Kelly, second? Bill seconds?
Who was the second on that?
Bill
Oh, okay.
Ashton. All in favor? All right. Now we're down to leases. We have two of them, and both of them will take action. We saw them at the last meeting, so you want to just quickly summarize?
They're both existing tenants, 3-year term at existing rate, consistent with what we have been doing in the last year for our tenants.
All right. We'll take these one at a time, I guess. The first one would be the Freight House Farmers Market 3-year lease. Is there a motion? Bill? Okay. A second?
Stephen, item 2.
Oh, you have a question? Okay, wait a minute, we have a motion and a second to approve. Now, Bill, you have a question? Did you have a question? Go ahead.
Steve, in paragraph 2, it talks about the flood. And I don't understand when I read that, what the farmer's market's obligation is and ours is when they go out of business in the Keene lot due to the flood. Do we factor out the time they're shut and change their rent, or are they obligated for all their rent?
Yeah, so it has only been a couple times, and most recently 2019, where they've been displaced. They often still pursue, still continue, but then we help identify a different place. For example, we were in the Scott County Edmond building parking lot. That has been kind of the traditional plan B when water preempts them in the stadium or Modern Woodman parking lot. And so we do all we can to keep them in their regular home and work with them if they need to move, giving them enough heads up along the way. That's part of that communication thing. But I don't believe we've rebated anything in the past, so that's not intended to say that they would, if they were displaced, for example, they would not owe rent for that period. They still do also have a indoor market component to it as well, which usually, we haven't had water inside the building. Access just becomes an issue sometimes.
I know that this is the way we state it, but I think it's so open-ended that it's incorrect for us as a commission not to set some type of rule We can do that by looking at flood stages. We can look at the
Right.
street and know when they can't get across the street to go there and specify that's when they're gonna go down. And then I think in all fairness, we ought to be reducing their rent they're giving to us some when that occurs. That's my own.
Yeah, I think what this paragraph is intended to do, and what we have done, is to make sure that we are in constant communication in the event, from what we're seeing or understanding through other sources, National Weather Service and other flood prediction sources. I'm already in contact with the executive director of the farmers market as we speak, for this year, which is looking good, the outlook. And so that paragraph's really intended to say that if the city says that due to safety concerns that we need to have them relocate, that they do contractually need to relocate. And so that's what that's intended for and has operated under for this time. I think we can look at, some sort of rebate. You'll recall after 2019 that they were included as well as others in that couple-month rent abatement program. So they were most recently, compensated for that.
See, the farmer's market is one thing, but we're gonna talk a little bit later when we get around to the actual freight house. And the actual freight house, like last year, it wasn't just a flood, it was access across through work. They couldn't run their business. And I don't believe that it's fair for us as the landowner to not do something to help that occupant. That's my one.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments. I think in most other cases, like the tenants in Union Station and in a couple other areas, there's language. This is a little different agreement with a little different partner, but there's stated language that exists in those lease agreements that talk about the specific abatement for the prorated time that is unspent in their leased premise.
All right. The rest of us all comfortable with the way it's stated? Okay.
I move approval.
We have a motion and a second already on the floor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. It's approved. This is Antonella's, number 2, pizzeria for 3 years at the same price. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes.
Is there a motion to approve that?
I got a question.
Well, let me get a motion. You want to say, okay, thanks. We got Kelly and Neil. And now, Bill, go ahead with your question.
Steve, I might be blind, but I can't find anything in here that talks about the flood. It would normally be in terms too. I might be blind, I can't find anything.
I thought it was in there, but let me quick look.
We can move on, Steve. There's language in the other leases in the freight house due to flood.
Say that again, please.
I think there's language in the other leases for
Yeah,
the freight house that exists.
I think it's Union Station primarily that you're recalling, and not so much a part of any of the leases at the freight house. Just, you make a good point about access issues make it difficult, but the difference is that freight house hasn't had the same kind of event, except for 2019, so now asterisk there, as Union Station. It goes under a lot quicker. And so because because of that, previous lease agreements have been written to include abatement specifically in the leases of Union Station, and not as a part of the freight house as a rule.
So D, I don't have any problem with moving forward with putting an amendment that Steve adds language pertinent to the flood.
Well, I don't know if I agree with you. I mean, let's talk about what this would be. I'm not really sure I would want to see in a lease agreement access on public roads. I mean, we could get down to what that is. That paragraph would have to be quite tight to do it. I think in terms of abatement, as if there's a flood and you can't get there, if there is a paragraph, which I have not seen, I'd be more comfortable in actually seeing that. But we've not had them in prior years of the Freight House leases. And I don't think we've had any issues with the tenant in terms of the tenants in accepting those leases. So I think we could look
I
at
think
these
while I've
going.
been on the commission, we've actually abated some of the rent when it was.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did, and because of
Union
how many
Station.
months it went by, but what if the flood came up for 1 week and then went down, or didn't really surround the Freight House? I think we'd have to have elevations and a lot of stuff if you really wanted to put that in. I think it would be easier, maybe this is my viewpoint of working with the tenants as we had in the last flood, and with an understanding that I think they understand that the commission wants them to stay in business and not go out of business. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how the rest of you feel. Anybody else want to
The
comment?
one small difference between the two, and I don't want it to feel like we're,
Right.
mincing hairs here, but is that we actually say for Union Station, we have to evacuate. We have to say, I mean, I know that sounds harsh, like in the moment, but ahead of time, giving them days, we have to say, you have to leave. The Freight House, we have not had to do that.
Right.
I mean, access, you're right. Access was not great, but many of them, after a few days, still kind of kept going, or a couple of them at least. Now, 2019 is an exception, but generally, as my memory serves me,
Yeah.
going back to like 2008 even, there was, you can get up onto the boardwalk. I mean, even if the water is surrounding the Freight House, north, south, Ripley, there's still this higher level in the stadium, the northeast part of the parking lot where people, are able to get onto the deck and then walk across there. And those businesses, many of them, I don't want to say all of them for all of the time, and 2019 again is a unique situation, but that's the difference fundamentally between
Well,
Freight House and Union Station.
you have to set up the flood protection for
Yes.
Union Station
Where you
before it
can't.
floods. So they're out of business before it even actually gets there.
And we don't have
You
that at the
can't
Freight
go
House.
over those HESCO barriers, or before that were, walls, or if you have the metal gates in the door, you can't get inside the building. So you lose that building long before the water even gets around it. Now, if we get the new flood protection, that will be much more modern, easier to put up. Access can stay a lot longer. But I could see the difference in the two leases, because you're really out of that, unfortunately, and that's why we don't have a tenant, and probably will have difficulty with a tenant in Union Station. You lose it almost every year at 18, when it's predicted to go to 18.5. And that's not a very high flood.
Deep.
I just want us to see have at least some consistent thing that this commission does. So when the flood comes, we don't just sporadically treat A one way and C a different way. We should be able to get some language that we all know we're going to try to adhere to. Other than that, I don't have any problem, but we did in the past, when the flood came up, we dealt with each one.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just
We
hit,
have a statement regarding the flood in the Antonellis. Under that number 19, section B, the last sentence on page 6, it talks about the abatement of the report.
Oh, you have it in here. If it's unfit to occupy.
I thought some of our newer ones we
Yeah, but
had.
that means literally that water's gone into it, and the
Right.
health department or somebody said you can't
You can't
occupy it.
be in there.
What happens which, my gosh, I hope it never happens at the Freight House because they're up high. What happens there is you just can't get to the door. Or the city's closed all the streets down, and so no one thinks you can get to the door. Yeah, but this is like literally, this paragraph has a lot to do with what happens at the barbecue place, which is water, well, I mean, literally, if it gets up that high, it goes through the building. And so it's useless. So I think we can look at that. I'm thinking that we're overthinking it, and it might be interesting that no one on the other side of this lease has been interested in changing it. So is there another question here?
Yeah.
Yeah, go
I guess
ahead.
my
Oh, sorry, I did that.
That's okay. I mean, so business interruption is part of what you do with insurance for, as a tenant. And so, I mean, I think that it would be difficult for us to try and jump in anytime there's an act of God. I think as a commission, we need to sort of set our parameters. Our tenants should have insurance for business interruption, which is something that would occur with a flood. I think that it is good to have some sort of consistent methodology that we would use for abatement. So I think that is something that we should have some conversation about and create whatever, that plan might be that we would do. But I don't think we would want to put that into the lease. When you're talking about an act of God that we can't really easily identify when there is going to be business interruption and when there's not. And again, I think that is part of that's part of what a company does when they rent out a space. They get insurance to handle those kind of situations that are out of their control, that are going to have economic hardship for them. So I think that we're better sort of following that path. And then as a side discussion, we probably should come up with what would our abatement plan be in the event that we had another 25-foot flood type thing.
Yeah. And I think after we get the flood study, we'll have more elevations and more understanding of what that will be too, to really be able to nail that down a little bit more. Yep. Any other questions on this? All right, all those in favor of the lease, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, approved. We're down to projects. The first one is the operating budget, and I think there's only one change from what we saw last.
Yeah.
Well, there's some few minor changes from the last time.
Minor changes, but the result is positive. You'll see that there's a modest increase in the ending fund balance under the fiscal year 2022 recommended budget, and within the expenditures and transfers out column or line items, we adjusted primarily facilities maintenance, that cost of $14,500. The city is going to a different kind of chargeback allocation, and we're no longer going to be responsible for that particular piece. So that's a positive piece. We're still going to be able to utilize facilities maintenance as we do for our tenants and some of the minor issues before we have to call in, a plumber or something with more detail. But what I elected to do then was enhance maintenance, building and grounds, utility service, and project expense. We'll see how that comes out, but I don't believe we will. We'll see how this year goes, but on utilities, I don't think we'll need all of that allocated amount. And so that, to me, is part of being, having a conservative budgeting approach to this as well. Obviously, in addition, both in the current fiscal year and the year next, for fiscal year 2022, I want to reemphasize what my presentation contained last month, and that was a lot of this depends upon the payback period of at least primarily now one of our tenants. I mean, it's a sizable amount, but there's positive signs of the going forward here, but a lot of that does depend. It spans a couple fiscal years. Our fiscal year for this year concludes at the end of June, and so it's not going to all be paid back. By then, it's not intended to be, but I think that as we look at fiscal year 2022, and by the end of that, year, you know, I have every reason to believe that we should be back on track. And so that is not necessarily a part of this budget, okay? That's not contained that in here because I'm, you know, until it's in hand, I'm still unsure of its receipt. And so I didn't want to be in a position where we budgeted that amount and then had to midstream correct something. I'd much rather have that be extra, even if we go over budget and know that some of that bed is there. So anyway, that is where we're at, minor change from last month's meeting, but wanted you to be aware of it.
All right, I do need a motion.
I make a motion.
Operating budget.
A second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, you have an operating budget that matches the city's operating budget that the council will approve, hopefully. Have they done it?
Yep, it's coming up.
Time?
I mean, the budget is,
2 weeks?
yeah, I think, yep.
All right, perfect. Now, we just have some discussion. We have a new item, Riverfront Refresh.
What I want to do is, I presented on this last week, and I intend to kind of continue to as we move forward into this season. And I just wanted to let you know of some updates and get a couple things on your schedule. One is, we're planning to, on Saturday, April 17th, in, you know, the commission in conjunction with the city council to do a Riverfront, what we'll call Beautification Day. So I wanted you to have that in your calendar. We'll get, you know, the word out, and we'll have some, hopefully a good amount from the public as well, that we'll have some projects to work on. We're talking like an 8 to noon kind of thing, probably, you know, start off at the Freight House and conclude there too. But this is intended to both do some actual projects. I mean, I'm talking about some cleanup, some, you know, coming out of the winter, there's always those kinds of things, but it's also a good, I think a good project to co-host with the city council and to help set a tone for the 2021 season that we're calling Riverfront Refresh, because we're intending to, you know, do even a better job of the operations, maintenance, and programming of all parts of our riverfront. And you heard last meeting where we talked about some capital projects that are happening, both at River Heritage Park and at Veterans Memorial Park. Those are factors too, but we also have some other weekly, daily updating maintenance and operational kinds of things that, as we encourage people to utilize our riverfront, that we need to maintain it in a way that we can all be proud of. And so staff is working accordingly on that. It's been a tough couple years where people have not visited probably the riverfront as frequently as what we want them to, for a variety of reasons in both of those years. And we believe that 2021 is going to be different. And we're seeing about that very aggressively through a robust schedule of you know, dynamic and interesting events. For example, I have been in contact with Mercado in Moline to come and do a Mercado on the Mississippi and utilize Quinlan Court as the home for that for a couple times a month. And we have to work out some of the details already, but I look for that to happen. Last summer, we had the Black Business Network that had monthly markets on Sundays at in the stadium, Modern Woodman Park parking lot. I'm talking with them about the same kind of thing. Again, obviously different times, different weeks, you know, to keep that area, but all of the riverfront programmed and moving forward, working with the Freight House Farmers Market and the Freight House tenants to produce a couple events that not ready necessarily to announce at this point, but some things that will help to move people down, you know, to that area When you have the built-in infrastructure of the farmer's market already, they're a logical, and then the leadership of the executive director, Lori Beeman, it's a natural to be able to partner rather than, recreating that whole structure, just utilize the area that we have and go in as a partner with them to do some things. Obviously, we have a summer concert series. We want that to be even more robust. And I've thought a lot in the past about having like a movies on the Mississippi, and we're going to do it. We're going to have a couple times where we're going to encourage, families to come down to LeClaire Park, and we're going to have, family-friendly movie for people to enjoy. And I envision, food trucks or some vendors along Biderbeck, and, sort of this free admission to the park. And so those are the kinds of things I just want to make sure that you know that I'm aggressively working on. I feel strongly that they're needed now more than ever, and it is also something that the staff and the city council, specifically Alderman Grip here, has been also very involved in, and I have every reason to believe that 2021 will be a spectacular year for Davenport's Riverfront. Are there any questions about anything there? I'll just continue to kind of give you updates along the way as I'm ready to sort of make them public, but happy to talk to any one of you about anything in particular along the way.
So you do think the concerts at LeClaire Park, the monthly ones, that's going to happen?
Yeah, those are actually like June through August on
Yeah.
Sundays, and yes, they're going to happen, and I hope to actually add a few to it, to be honest with you. And so some of that budget piece where I was able to bring in I'm going to need to take from some of that project expense line item, but I'm also looking at a couple grant opportunities always, and some of those kind of things, obviously. And I think the city is a willing partner in this as well.
And are you thinking the movie nights would be in LeClaire Park as opposed to like the Flex Lot type thing?
Yeah, I actually am more worried about, for a movie, sound as an issue, too close to River Drive, and so I think that some of this we'll try.
No, I think the theater there, the screen would be perfect. I mean, you'd be tucked in there.
Yeah, I mean, I see, the band,
You can
movie
see it,
screen
it's
in front of the
elevated.
band shell, and sort of being able to use all of LeClaire Park and have the river to your left, and you're actually,
I think that's a great idea.
close by accessible parking. And so I think we'll see how some of this goes, but I don't think there's any reason not to try a number of these things. And I believe that there'll be other events that pick up from here. I've reached out to a number of the museums and Quad City Arts and things like that. We want to animate. I mean, that's an important part of this, not just throwing an event or throwing a party and hope people come, but to also have animation. So I mean, I envision like pickup artist or some visual artist. I mean, we may be, from time to time you may see some chalk artistry, or I just believe strongly that we need to push aggressively on that kind of programming. In the past, we've kind of been a lot concerned about funding. It is a concern, but it's not a reason to not move to forge on. And I think that others will follow suit. I've been in contact with Downtown Partnership. They're also doing some restructuring and a little pivoting on that, and it works pretty nicely with what we're doing. So we'll be even stronger partners, to be quite honest with you, about a number of these things. We ultimately have the same goal in mind for the community, and so it will be a good year, but it's going to be a busy one.
Yeah, I think it sounds pretty exciting, actually. And if we can use is it Quinlan Court or Quinlan Plaza?
Quinlan Court.
Okay, I'll try to get that down. If we can use that in a way that can, with the downtown partnership, to enliven that portion of our downtown, I think, to use the riverfront and all those businesses around. It's a boost time. And I know in their strategic plan, they have a lot of use of their pocket parks where the the sky bridge comes down. If we could figure out, kind of where we are on the calendar with each other, I think that would, that's synergy and that makes it a lot livelier. So I'm looking forward to it. It'd be nice that we can walk around maybe with our masks on, but not with dread this summer. So that's great.
Steve? Steve, if I could say something. So it sounds fantastic, but sometimes I feel like it's hard to know when all the events actually go on. What is the plan for like advertising, or can we invest in maybe getting some newer signs or bigger signs or something and put them more around town?
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like a lot of stuff happens that's fantastic, but I didn't know about.
I think a major part of this, it's connecting in even better with the city's revamped communication strategy. It has gotten a lot better, and I think it's a multiple level area, whether it's physical signage, but also, utilizing social media platforms and all of that, and hopefully even maybe some PSA kinds of things with some of our friends in the media. But I think it's all of those things to reach people, especially this year, because there will be a litany of them, of events and things to do. And so we don't want to hear that people didn't know about it. That'd be the worst. And then there'll be some of that, there always is, but I think we'll be much more aggressive in our getting the word out. And I've already seen or felt the city doing that in general with information.
So Kelly, you have a question?
Hey, first of all, I hate to ask a dumb question. Where's Quinlan Court?
Oh, that's the infamous, the old term we used to call the flex lot.
Oh, okay.
I think the city council sometime last year, but
No,
renamed it,
yeah,
or?
Okay.
It was, yes, that's
Yeah,
correct.
Okay.
we probably didn't get that
Okay.
on our agenda, that it.
Okay, so
just to
Quinlan,
be
it's gonna
informed.
be Quinlan Court?
Yeah, I think
Is that
that's the
what it's called?
boat, right? Named after the boat?
Okay. The other thing, so I just wanted to jump back. So the Riverfront Refresh, so that's an event that's going to happen on the 17th, and it's sort of a city effort and Kyle, maybe you know this, is this something where you're going to like rally people to bring down teams of people where you can say, okay, kind of like, we're going to take care of, this part of the road? And is that sort of the concept behind it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm leading that piece,
Okay.
and it is all of that. We're going to begin to get that word out best we can. It
Okay.
would be great if we reached into the business community too, like you're suggesting. I think that is
Yeah, I think
awesome.
definitely, and maybe even create some fun competitions it seems like there's a lot of opportunity to do something like that, and I think that is something DEP might be able to, band together and get a group that does it and just kind of.
Make a
depending
little
on-
competitive
yeah.
thing out of it. That would be
Yeah,
great
just,
too.
just for fun and really make it, I don't know what length we're thinking of in terms of which, we have a long riverfront, so.
Yeah, no, there's no shortage of things to do. I mean, there's everything from, trash pickup to coming out of winter, how you have to, before you even plant, plant flowers or whatever, you've got to go in there and grab things from the fall and all of that. And so, I mean, I think what we want to do is, depending on how the weather allows up to that point, I mean, I see some plantings, I see some, this is really what I'd like to do, is have some teams along at least in LeClaire or Centennial Park railing. There's
it's
a need
probably
for
too
some
cold to paint
painting.
it?
What?
Is it too cold to paint it? I mean, those would be projects that would be
Yeah.
kind of
I
nice
think
with teams.
in mid-April, we'll be, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's dependent. I think we'll know a little closer to that time period if we're going to be able to do something like that. It would be my hope that we could. I mean, if we buy the paint, we could save a lot of money by having teams in sections, and we could get a lot done. I mean, the railing, it's been a while since it has been painted, and it might seem like a fairly simple thing, but at the same time, it's been underwater a few times too, and it's showing that. And I just think part of sprucing up, it's those big, but also a lot of small touches along in any one of these areas. And if we're inviting people down, I want to make sure that we're popping. So Yes, all of
Great.
that,
Okay.
yes.
Thanks.
And working with parks as well on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think along that line, I think a good thing might be though, if you, Steve, or whoever's maintenance or whatever, if you came up with a list of things that needed to be done so that people could kind of, oh yeah, I got a group and we can do that. So they kind of get a little advance notice as what all there's going to be going on.
It'd be cool
I
to
think would
how-
be a good idea to get that out as
Absolutely, yep.
soon as possible.
like something that people would go buy. All right. Let's see, strategic plan River West,
Oh,
we're
I think
waiting
Alderman Grip.
on a meeting? We're not.
Alderman-
Kyle?
Can I comment on the refresh?
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. I wanted to make sure you guys all had a chance to speak. So Alderman Condon and I and Steve have really been pushing for this concept of the Riverfront refresh. You guys might know JJ lives downtown, has young children. The Riverfront is his neighborhood park. And him and I have conversations about all the time. If you're standing back from 100 feet and you look at the riverfront, it looks pretty good. Sometimes, right? Not last year. It looked under construction, right? But before that, it looked pretty good from 100 feet away. And then you get into the park and the detail of the park, it was really in poor condition because we had not fully recovered from the big flood. Then we had the minor flood and all the construction last year. And obviously, the last 2 years have been somewhat depressing for our riverfront. And our fear has been that, people haven't been recreating on our riverfront for the past 2 years. And we do not want people to forget that the riverfront is the recreation place in the Quad Cities. And so the riverfront needs to be refreshed. There's going to be maintenance and capital dollars put to this, but then also we really challenge Steve, and he has done an incredible job of coming up with ideas on how do you get people to the riverfront, all different types of people. So the menu of events that he has scheduled for this year is great. We're going to see a ton of people down there. I'm very excited. So I've been telling people this story. Right before Christmas, December, it was kind of a nice day, nice evening out, and the sunsets were good. So I took my family down to Dillon Fountain to take pictures. And we were waiting for the sun to go down. We were watching it, and I noticed, we were sitting on the benches around the fountain, and I noticed that within an hour, between 12 and 15 couples parked in the parking lot under the Sky Bridge, got out, walked across Dillon Fountain, and they promenaded along the river and came back to their car, and it was about 15 minutes. So here we are. We've been under construction. We've had major floods. It's the middle of December, and we have continually people who are drawn to the riverfront. And it was just a good reminder to me that, the draw is there to the riverfront. We need to give them something to do. We need to give them a reason to stick around. And we have the full intention this year of making sure everybody in the Quad Cities is reintroduced to the Davenport riverfront. And then just to answer a couple of your questions, Quinlan Court, the mayor asked JJ, myself, and Marion to research a name and bring it back to him. We did that right before the end of last year. We decided on Quinlan Court, named after the Quinlan boat. Also, Quinlan Court is QC. That'll help you to remember that. But that has been passed and accepted. That is the formal name of that parking lot. And then Neil, great concern about how do you get the word out about all of these events. So I don't know if you guys remember a few years ago when we launched food truck licensing in Davenport. It was the first time we'd done it. Our social media was the only advertising that we did for those, and we were able to bring hundreds and hundreds of people every time we did it, to the point that the food truck sold out, and it got to the point that they took off and they no longer needed those events because they figured out a way to make their business go without us, and that's ideal. I think that's it.
I have one other thought while you were talking, Kyle. So, if you go along the coastal cities, everybody makes a big deal out of sunsets, and you mentioned you went down there to watch a sunset. You know, maybe we could have, Steve, you could add this to your parties here. Maybe we could have a sunset party. You know, I mean, as silly as it might sound, I don't know where the sun actually, if you can see it, can you see
Oh, it's
at different
beautiful.
times of year? I mean, we've had some beautiful sunsets here lately, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And, you know, the way people, maybe we could have I could ask one of our buglers in our American Legion to go down and, you know, play taps. Like there's a guy in Clearwater Beach or in Florida, these different areas, there's a guy that plays taps as the sun goes down. You know, just an idea. Maybe it's silly, but
No.
a sunset
All,
party.
all ideas like that, please, let me
Yeah.
know. Except for the sunrise party.
Yeah.
You'll have to own that one.
You know, a sunset party, something new and unique, I think,
Yes.
you know, I think there's a lot of people that might be interested in that.
Thanks.
Those are great ideas. All right, now we'll move on. I think the strategic plan, we're just waiting on a meeting with the city council, so maybe we'll just not put it on here
Yeah.
until we get one.
Correct.
And then anything new about Union Station?
There really isn't on this either. It just, by not including this particular one, I wouldn't want you to think we've forgotten about it, but we're really just still kind of awaiting FEMA and a final approval of this Union Station flood mitigation project. Again, I don't want to overstate it, but it seems promising, and I'll just leave it at that for this month. And hopefully by next month, have some sort of update for you on this. But the goal really, in a perfect world, would be this construction season for this to be worked on exactly.
And then are we maybe done with the Canadian Pacific Railroad crossings for now?
Yeah, that also probably can be removed from the agenda as a monthly item.
Yeah. Okay, all right. Do you have a staff report in addition to those?
I think fundamentally you heard it.
Okay. I had listed here, I have feedback from half of you in the sense of all the 10. So if you could get me something on Steve's performance. So I've talked with Bruce Berger, and basically I'm going to take your comments and kind of write them up in 3 or 4. And this, if those of you who haven't submitted anything, here's kind of the general areas that I'm thinking, or we've been thinking about, is sort of a governance, the relationship Steve has with us as the commission, his relationship that he has with the city council and mayor. Also strategic planning, both annual and long range, his abilities there. And things that we've just talked about, program development, his financial management, and that would be looking at the leases and all of those kinds of things in addition to the budget. And then his, our client relationships with our leaseholders and others. So those are kind of some category areas. You don't have to hit them all. For those of you who are new, which I think I've asked, how did he do with orientation? Do you feel comfortable coming in? Are there other things that you would like to have? And then if you have, things that you would like to see Steve do in the future, and I think I'm looking more for not a specific project because, well, I'll bring that back here, but just kind of what you're thinking there. I'll put those in those categories and then share them with Steve and then send them on to Bruce. What my goal here is, and I think I said it the last time, the city has a system that puts people on ranges and steps. And so he has automatic increases besides inflation for a few years. The only way he can't get it is if there's a negative performance review. And so those happen. But I believe and I feel pretty strongly about that. Our feedback and something in his personnel file is a good thing to have every year. So if you can get that to me at the end of the month, I will turn that around with Steve and Bruce. Sound good? All right, so that's all there is. We have no public. So adjournment is in order. Second? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.